as I told the panelists on the phone when we were having a conference call, it's not often that we get to come out of the ivory tower and actually interact with people who are not just teaching and thinking about, but actually living and doing. So I am learning as much from this panel as I hope you are. And it couldn't be a more auspicious time to address the topic of diversity in social media. When you think about the fact that we are an information economy, you realize pretty quickly that the subject of diversity has become embedded in almost all of the major issues that characterize the political, social, economic, and cultural landscape. On the political front, I need not remind you that diversity in information is an incredibly important issue between the subject of the presidential election and the question of Trump's campaign tactics. In terms of culture, Gamergate is very much alive and well in terms of topics, and the subject of bullying online as well, with regard to sexuality, gender, and race. In terms of the notion of economic diversity, I think it depends on whom you ask, but 2035, according to most estimates, is the year in which we become a majority-minority country. And that means that people of color will be filling the workplace and workspaces, but maybe more importantly for those who sell things, people of color will be buying, and markets will become strong to the extent that people of color become very much a part of the economy and fully integrated. It's interesting to note that on social media, the structure of social media networks differs quite a bit depending on the outsider group that you're looking at. So outsider groups in general tend to have smaller networks. They're more tightly clustered, meaning those who are in the network more likely to know each other, whereas insiders have much more broadly spread, more loosely tied networks, which means information comes in from a wide diversity of sources. And then last but not least, as we're quite aware, and as our panelists will make us aware, social media networks are segregated in terms of outsider groups on almost any axis you look at. And one of the topics that I'm going to ask the panelists to address tonight is this question of describing the topic of exclusion and discrimination and the lack of diversity in social media, and then I'll also be asking them to say something about how to fix that problem. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce each of our panelists and then tell you a little bit about the format that we're going to be following. So first is Neil Macneill. I need to put my glasses on, sorry. I've reached that age. So Neil Macneill, thank you, saved the day, is a YouTube personality, creator of Geeking Out. He promotes visibility and a very broad reach for LGBT characters in the media. He's part of the Frederator channel, and he is a comic book writer specializing in love stories of all sexualities, not just the hetero love stories that the media loves to focus on. DMA, Donna Michelle Anderson, is a veteran writer, producer, showrunner, network executive who has pitched, bought, sold, produced for CBS, Bravo, BET, A&E. She's the founder of the Hollywood Diversity Network. She's focused very much on matching people who are seeking to network with mid to top level executives for hiring, and that includes the creation of a digital database for that kind of creating. And she's going to talk quite a bit about ways to deal with exclusion questions as they emerge in the social media space. Ana Flores is the founder and CEO of Latina Bloggers Connect, a digital influencers marketing agency, the largest network of Latina influencers. She's a TV producer in the Latino, Hispanic, digital, and media space. She created Spanglish Baby, an award-winning resource for bicultural, bilingual parents raising kids. My parents could have used that. And then finally, last but not least, is Lala Castro. She's the director of the social media department for Giga Savvy, a digital marketing agency working with a wide range of brands, bloggers, and influencers. She's also the co-founder of Latina Geeks, encouraging Latinas in the technology blogging space, and they have recently developed a partnership with Univision. So these are the experts who will be talking to us about the topic of social media diversity. So what we're going to do is to divide up the presentation into two parts. For the first part, each panelist will speak for up to 5 minutes about describing the problem of diversity or the lack of diversity, to include discrimination and exclusion in the area of social media space that they are most expert in. And then after they're finished walking us through the description of the problem, we're going to ask them to solve the problem. And that is to give us the best practices available for people who want to try to remedy the problem of exclusion and lack of diversity in the social media space. And then after that, we're going to open it up to Q&A so that you guys can ask the questions that you find most pressing. So to start us off, DMA, if you could describe the problem, and I know DMA is going to be speaking mostly about remedies, but to the extent that you want to summarize, and then I'm just going to ask you to pass the mic from there on in.
Hi, everybody. Is anyone here very, very interested in solutions around hiring in social media with diversity? Please raise your hand. And around broadening your content around social media? And broadening your community with diversity in social media? Oh, that's right. So I think that the wonderful thing about social media is it's wildly inclusive if you are a person of color, or LGBT, or a woman, or anyone who has been shut out from traditional media. There are no barriers to us connecting to each other. And I would add, as we witness the rise of the Bernie bro, of young white males identifying as a separate cohort for the first time in history, that social media also has created a place for people who do not identify with maybe mainstream white ideologies to actually find other people like them and not be kind of alone in the wilderness in their neighborhoods, not sure if anyone else believes the same things they believe. So for me, the issue with diversity inside of social media is a challenge for people who themselves do not have or embrace diversity in their lives. So that would be mainstream folks who are really challenged by diversity in social media. And I think the reason for that is twofold. The first and the simplest is if you just don't know and are not engaged with people who are not like you, there is really no easy entryway into that space in social media, whether you're trying to hire people or penetrate communities or expand content. So if you don't have your own resources to do that, you will feel very shut out and maybe even resistance to the kind of this incredible diverse dialogue that's happening amongst all these other people that you don't get to be a member of. And then I think at the much deeper level in our nation, if you did not grow up with a given problem, then you don't have any tools to kind of engage with that problem. And if your only tools are to insult or to try and shut dialogue down or to challenge rather than to kind of sit and learn and not take it too personally, social media can be a very scary and threatening place. So I have lots of solutions, but for me, all of the issues around diversity in social media are for people who themselves are either not diverse or whose worlds are not diverse and they don't know how to penetrate that, and I really have some great solutions for them.
Awesome. Thank you. Going off that a little bit, a lot of where I come from in the social media world is very YouTube-based. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, you would have seen a whole string of articles online, articles in the news about teen suicides in the LGBT community due to online harassment. The way that social media has evolved, though, since then is allowing a more open dialogue for people who are experiencing that harassment to find comfort in other people who are like them. YouTube offers a really great opportunity for people of all gender identities and sexual identities to come together in a way that hasn't really happened before. We've seen a great influx of creators, especially over the past 2 or 3 years, who have made a name for themselves on YouTube, kind of under this veil of a straight white male who have since come out as either transgender or gay or bisexual. And it's really great to see those people kind of creating a voice for a community that never really had much of a voice online to begin with. We did have problems of online bullying, like I said, but now it's creating a space that allows other people to come to the aid of other people. So I feel like for the LGBT community specifically, a big solution for spreading diversity on social media is just to be present. we have such a great opportunity to put ourselves out there, show people in this world that there are other walks of life that you can live if you are not used to that. As somebody who grew up in a very religious family who was also very accepting, I'm kind of a rare breed where my family has been so supportive of me. I came out at 14 years old, and I feel like if I hadn't been that comfortable with myself, I would have experienced a lot of online bullying that would have gotten to me, but having that sort of support system isn't an option for everyone. So a lot of people turn to YouTube, turn to Twitter, turn to Tumblr, turn to all these different social media platforms to really get themselves out there and make themselves known to the world, and also find people like them. So in that regard, I feel like just getting yourself out there and allowing yourself to be visible and be who you are is the best way to help spread more diversity, because people have a right to be who they want to be.
We're actually completely on the same page. When I talk about issues of diversity, I always find myself in this strange position because the way that I've approached it always has been by just celebrating who we are as Latinas, as women. It's not a in your face, we're trying to create this space because it needs to be more diverse. No, it just is what it is. We are who we are, and we finally have the tools to be out there. So, speaking of we are who we are, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. And how I ended up in this path of, kind of breaking through in social media and showcasing Latinas and bilingual children and etc. I was a bilingual, bicultural child myself. I was born in Houston. My parents were from El Salvador. They were legally in Houston. They ended up getting divorced when I was 6, and my mom moved back to El Salvador. My dad stayed in the U.S., and by then I already spoke Spanish and I spoke English. In El Salvador, I was in the American school, always bicultural. I never understood that there was all these boundaries and walls or whatever. I was always between. That was just the way I was brought up. It was a very different situation. So I always grew up knowing more globally about what it is to be a U.S. American and what it is to be a Latina, which back then I was a Salvadoran. I wasn't a Latina. I come back to the States when I was 18, studied TV production, and the only path I could see for myself was Hispanic television. When Hispanic television didn't really exist that much, Univision in the 90s. This was before Ricky Martin up there, singing La Vida Loca and the Grammys. So it was always about celebrating who I was, the things that I loved, the things that made me rich, the music I loved to hear, etc. Always working in the Hispanic industry, MTV Latino. I ended up here for Mundos. And then I become a mom, and I quit my jobs right before the recession, and I realized that I start finding this wonderful word of mom bloggers around 2007, 2008, and I was looking for mom bloggers that would help me be a mom because I had no idea what I was doing here, and that I wanted my child to learn Spanish and be just like me, right? I wanted her to know Spanish just like I did and understand both cultures and the whole thing. And I wasn't finding it. So instead of complaining about not finding it, I just decided to do it. But I'm saying this because it's not intentional when you're doing what you're doing in that sense of opening up that space of diversity. And Spanglish Baby, became one of the top Latina mom blogs, and then that led to opening Latina Bloggers Connect because there was no space for the Latina bloggers at that time that wanted to work with brands when the general market was already working with brands. So we figured out how to make that happen and help and consult with the brands that wanted to reach out to us and understand how to be inclusive within their messaging and within their marketing. And they wanted to work with us, but they didn't know what to do with us. Should we work with bloggers only in Spanish? Should we, where are they? What do they want to write about? Like, how do we reach them? And that's what us as a community are bringing into this field of social media and blogging and content creation and YouTube by providing the voices that are accessible for the brands or the marketing, or, the companies that want to reach those diverse audiences. And again, when we were talking about we're going to have 5 minutes to talk about solutions, I'm like, my really what it is for me is those of us that want to be included, that want to open up a diverse world, have to use these tools that are now accessible for us to make that pathway open. And that's why Black Lives Matter, Lactism, whatever, like all these Latinos for Bernie, whatever, all these hashtags, everything just helps to say, we're here, this is what matters to us, and this is, as a community, we can gather and show what it is that we stand for.
So I'm on the other side of Vanna. I'm on the brand side, and we love working with some of her bloggers ourselves. Working for a digital agency in Orange County, we work with very well-known brands that only focus on mainstream. Well, as you start analyzing the engagement and the conversations that happen online, you start realizing that we're not all the same, and we're not all paying attention to the same messages. So the biggest question with a lot of our clients is, how do we create that content where we can, connect with them? Latinos being, they love to spend money, and it's like, how do we get them to come into our stores? How do we get them to talk about us? What language do we use? Do we use English, Spanish, Spanglish? How do we communicate with them? And that's something that a lot of brands, they want a solution for that, or they want to know how to do it, but a lot of them don't want to spend the money. Yet they still put small budgets into small campaigns, and it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with chump change? And that's not enough. Would you do the same for mainstream? You wouldn't. And so we have to learn how to, at least on my end, I have to make 5 cents reach $1. It's just almost impossible. So we have to find different solutions, creative solutions to spread that message, which is, thanks to bloggers, they can send that message for us. And, we have to also figure out, okay, what do they want? What language do we speak? Is it Spanish, English? And it's hard because it's not always the same thing for all brands. There's Latinos that prefer to listen to their content in English. There's Latinos that prefer content in Spanish. And at the end of the day, it really is to analyzing your audience and kind of figuring that out. I know that it sounds almost like too much work, and it is work, but social media is work, right? So it's not supposed to be easy. Solutions, there's definitely solutions, but you're going to have to spend the time and the money.
Mm-hmm. Great. So this is a really interesting mix of perspectives. Some perspectives are there really is no barrier to exclusion. Other perspectives include the idea that budgets and money end up being an important potential barrier. And so I'm going to press on each of you at the beginning of the Q&A to say something a little bit more specific about those problems. But first, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about, in very specific and concrete terms, what it is that a range of people can do. Content creators, influencers, budget executives can do to deal with issues that you've raised. And in particular, I'm interested to hear specifics that deal with this problem of segregation versus integration, and the notion of getting people who aren't already in the network connected into the network, whether that's the brand looking for an audience or looking for a market base that they have yet to tap, or political message that is yet to reach a particular group. So be as specific as you can, and BMA, I know you've got lots of specifics.
Like 18 things. So the first thing is just to start at the most personal level. So I'm going to go back to when I was a showrunner, and I had at that point 2 shows back-to-back that I had to staff up very, very quickly, and we're talking about 90 to 100-person staffs. And so it was very important to me to have diversity on my teams. So I was throwing, in the months leading up to the start of those gigs, when I got my deals done, what I called realities, because I should point out, you guys are nonfiction producer and showrunner. And so a reality said that I was going to reach out to a group of people. That might be women that I knew, or people of color that I knew, and say, okay, I'm going to invite 10, 12 of you over to my house. But you can only come if you bring someone else diverse with you that I don't know at your professional level or higher. And there was never tea, guys. It was definitely champagne, because, it's TV. But it was really important to me to meet people that could fill my need, and because I decided from the beginning diversity mattered, you couldn't just bring someone who was just like you. And what that led to was, in the very first show that I staffed on, 45 of the 90 people came from those T's. I had built this spreadsheet of reality attendees, and then I went and presented. I'm an Academy member and a Guild member. I presented at the Academy the reality scenario, and it evolved into television area awards to try and just acknowledge people who are making proactive efforts to create a diverse experience behind the camera. So that's really the easiest thing you can do. Have a sit down. It doesn't matter if it's just Friday night beers with your friends, and say, would love to meet you. Please bring someone I don't know who's nothing like you. and just see where it takes you. That's like the lowest hanging fruit. If you're an executive or a brand rep or anyone in the kind of the corporate area who really wants to diversify their pool, that next level of things, or you're hiring, you guys, the next level of things that I did when I was a VP of development was I gave half a day every Friday to my coordinator to set up office hours. And anyone at all who wanted to meet me, not to pitch content, but who wanted to meet me because they wanted to literally have a general with me or talk about opportunities, or if they wanted me to build a website for them or fix their resume, I didn't care what it was. If she was scheduled, if she scheduled you and you came into my office, it was like the magic lamp and the genie. You're looking for a job, show me your resume. I will make at least one phone call. And it became kind of this huge experience for me to see how many people my team and I could meet with on Fridays and just help connect to other people. And in so doing, I got connected to their networks of people. So it was really incredibly easy to leverage the power of that office, because everyone wanted to get into the office. So if you came into the office, it was with the understanding that you would then make an introduction for me. So I would do anything you asked, but at the end, I wanted you to pull out your phone. This was like 5 years ago, so we called it Blackberries Up, everybody. So Blackberries Up, and everyone, you had to sit in the room, put me on speakerphone to introduce me to someone, a writer, producer, director, someone that I might be able to do business with at the network. So that's that next level, kind of using the institutional power of your office to say, what am I doing really in a solid structural way to regularly expand my sphere of familiarity? Because the issue is we hire who we know, we write about who we know, we do what we know, so you got to know more people. Next level up, speak of institutions. And this is totally amazing for everyone in the room, no matter what it is you're seeking to do in terms of diversity. Do not underestimate the power of affinity groups. So, if you went to college, you know that every college campus has like 80 affinity groups, right? There's affinity by gender, by every possible ethnic group, by every possible background interest, professional group, certainly by sexuality, by religion. If you are trying to diversify content, start with institutions that inherently will introduce you to people who identify with the community. So that could be student groups on college campuses, depending on the audience you're trying to reach or the people you're trying to hire. Certainly in our industry, the affinity groups are insane. I kept reaching out to people when we were trying to get scripts on a couple different jobs I had, and say, okay, I'm looking for, female writers or African American and Latino writers. And agents would literally say to me, we don't have anybody, when I had friends they represented. So I would just say, call the Writers Guild, and you may or may not know, but every one of our guilds and unions has some type of affinity committee groups. And so that would be like the Women's Committee, the African American Writers Committee, the Latino Writer Committee, the Disabled Writers Committee. Every one of those committees exists at the Writers Guild. So if you're looking to find people who can work with you or inform your sensibility or your content, start with the people who already have the skill set and are already identified with the community you're trying to penetrate. And if you're not trying to penetrate a specific community, just a good practice, go to events. When you see that the Black Screenwriting, the Organization of Black Screenwriters is having a Saturday event, show up. We're actually wildly friendly. It's the Trump supporters that are not nice. They are awesome. People are often quite thrilled when you show up outside of the group and say, I have an interest in who you are, unless you're coming in to tell them that you should have rights too, in which case you really bum everybody out. So that's kind of the next level. I want to show you on the computer two more things. I'm going to walk over. Follow me, everybody. No? Okay, thanks. So I just want to, a couple more things, taking it to the next level. If you'll go to, it should be open, you'll see a bunch of videos on, that's it. I see it just dropped in. So this is a wonderful digital channel on TV4 called Tribal TV that I work with, and just helping to, I think it's coming back up. And it's, we just did a kind of massive rebranding on them. Then I really want to touch on, on what he just said. And so one of the things that I fell in love with very recently on BuzzFeed was this whole series. You guys, I don't know if you guys know Chris Lamb, but he's one of the producers of BuzzFeed. I follow him on Twitter. He is Asian American, but he was really kind of interested in what was happening around the situation, the arguments about the mascots and whatnot, and he wanted to do a series on that. So he contacted the Native American Center in Los Angeles, and contacted the writers, producers, and actors that were a part there. They did this whole series that is so completely, ridiculously, amazingly, unbelievably on point. So here we have a man for whom this is not a community. He may have had empathy, I don't know. He certainly does now. That's Chris there in the bottom left. Isn't he this thing?
He said he was going to be here.
I'm old. I can do that. Yeah, he's okay. So if you can you go back to the top here? So what came out of this, and for some reason it's compressive, but what came out of this are these amazing videos. The best one, see if you can see the one underneath that is the one on reviewing music festival fashion. It's just a nightmare. So I won't click play on this, but if you guys want to see these later, it's tribaltv.org if you go to the blog. And then finally, at the biggest level, if you will switch tabs to Hollywood Diversity, the first Hollywood Diversity, the one to the left of that, Hollywood Diversity Network. So this is just a blog that I maintain through Planet DMA, through my consulting company, just about news and content and development that affect and inform producers, writers, and directors that are diverse in Hollywood, in film, TV, and digital, and diversity by ethnicity, by gender, by sexuality, and by physical ability, and ethnicity. Sorry if I said that. So the idea is, I think a lot of times mainstream frames diversity as a kind of us begging to get attention and us wanting to be included, and that's why I really want to reframe that. Social media changed that because the same five guys don't control access to communities anymore. They don't exist anymore. Nobody watches CBS News. Nobody watches CBS News. Sorry, Gail. Nobody watches it. Because if I want to know what happened, I can check into multiple groups and get excited around what 5,000 other people have to say that may not share my opinion. So that we don't have to be blessed to have a voice, to have reach, and to have impact anymore. So I just like to share stuff that will help us find out who's buying, what's up with content, and stay engaged as players. And then the next tab over, last thing, this evolved from, oh, good, okay, they're testing it right now. This evolved from, if you'll scroll, sorry, back to, come to the top one, right there. So this is something that evolved from an access database that I personally had. So we're now turning it into a public database, and you can put in, if you are a credentialed professional in broadcast, digital, or broadcast cable, digital, or film, because we want to connect mid to top level professionals to opportunity in this industry. So much of diversity in this industry concentrates on entry level people. But the issue with just entry level diversity programming is it's first hired, last hired, first fired. If there's no one at the middle level or the top level that will create a culture that will make you happy to stay at that company, or invest in you or mentor you so that you can rise, you'll do your 1 year as a CBS writer or a Disney fellow, and you will not work again, and that's what the numbers continue to show us. So my focus is on people who have the power to hire. If we're going to integrate mainstream institutions, it has to be diversified at the hiring level. And so what it lets you do there, if you'll use the filters really quick, Chelsea, click gender for 1 second. So if I'm looking for a Latina writer, so I can go to females, and these are just our first alpha users, and then switch to ethnicity, right next to gender, and Latina, fabulous, and let's get someone who's won like an award or something, because you see awards and honors up there. Great, Alma Award. And I have Nancy De Los Santos. So it's that easy for someone like me, if I'm looking for someone at a certain level or with a certain background, to go in, immediately find people I can hire. I can go to Nancy's page and I can see her links to IMDb, to LinkedIn, to staff me up if she's not scripted, and can directly send a message saying I'd be excited to work for you. And so those are all ways that we can find each other, connect each other, and you can find people not like yourselves. So I invite you, of course, to check out when we launch. We have one more week of testing, Hollywood Diversity Network.
So I don't know how to follow that up.
We're very excited about the romantic cartoon.
Yeah, no. So I am a comic book writer. It's funny because it all started because I was seeing all these comics being printed over the years, and they were all LGBT comics, and I would go to the LGBT section of the library and see like, oh, what's here for me to read? And I felt dirty for reading the things that were on these shelves, because it was practically porn was what I was reading, and I was like, as like a 17-year-old, like, I don't want to be ashamed to be reading this. I want to be able to read something that I can like bring home, that I can have in my parents' house, because I was still living at home at the time, and not have them question me and be like, what's this? Like, why are you reading this? This is smut. So I've been thinking for a while, and I'm like, how do I frame a story? How do I make an LGBT romance that is all based around not the sexual aspect, but the emotional aspect? And it doesn't really exist because, I mean, we live in an industry where sex sells. Like, sex is what gets people to buy anything these days. So what I've been doing, it kind of didn't start out this way. I started off working for a company that was very geek-oriented, very comic book, video game heavy, and they were looking for content creators to make videos for them. And I remember they were going through the whole list, and I was an intern at the time, so I was researching, and they were going through all these credentials. They were like, we want someone, like, we want an Asian girl, we would like somebody of African American persuasion, we would love a gay comic book person. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I can't find any of these. Like, I could not find a single content creator who was both blank and a geek. So I was looking for weeks trying to find people. We ended up finding a whole roster of people who fit most of the criteria, but I couldn't find anyone who was LGBT-oriented and a geek. So I went into them and I was like, hey, like, sorry to disappoint you, I couldn't find anybody who was into all this stuff to make content for you. Do you mind if I do it? And they were like, what? And I was like, this was me being like a ballsy intern, being like, I can do this. And they were like, yeah, if you can shoot like a test video, if you can give us a sample of what you could bring to the table, then we will go ahead with this. Flash forward 3 years, I am no longer with the company. I've moved on to other jobs, but I'm still making content that is very much centered around me being gay and geek. And from this, I was able to curate an audience through YouTube, through Twitter, through Tumblr, that I've talked for extensively about this on my channel, about how I wanted some sort of comic book or some sort of LGBT representation that wasn't entirely sexually driven. And I decided, you know, I'm just going to write this. So I wrote it out, went to a friend, he pitched some art to me, drew out a few sketches, wrote up some sample pages, and we were able to raise $10,000 on Indiegogo over the course of 2 days to publish this comic book, which is still in the process of being written and illustrated, which is kind of exciting for me, but also kind of scary because it's the first big undertaking that I'm doing. But it was one of those moments where I didn't really understand the scope of what I was doing at the time when I was first making this initial like audition video is what I would call it, until I started publishing videos very regularly on my own channel, and I started getting letters from people. And I didn't have anywhere, like I didn't have a public address, I didn't have a PO box, so they were sending them directly to the company. And the company was coming to me being like, hey, you're getting fan mail, and I'm like, that's weird. I am a 22-year-old goober who makes videos in my bedroom, like this isn't a thing that happens. And one of the first letters I got was somebody who said that my videos helped them realize that they could be a geek who was also gay, because they were like, I have a lot of LGBT friends who don't understand my geekdom, and I also have a lot of geeky friends who don't understand that I'm also a gay geek. So it kind of fostered this whole community of people who I'm now actually really good friends with, of realizing that we can be more than just one label in this subcommunity of nerddom, of fandom, of homosexuality, whatever you want to call it. And it was just a really great opportunity for me to understand that there's a lot more out there and a lot more walks of life that we don't really understand, and that there are people out there who are looking for that sort of niche audience, but it's not really a niche audience because there are so many people in this community. I've gone to comic conventions since and seen guys holding hands, I've seen girls cosplaying together, I've seen a lot of different couples emerge from this, and it's something that I didn't really see initially going into this, so it feels like we're becoming a lot more accepting as a geek community towards the LGBT community, but we're also becoming more comfortable with ourselves being LGBT and expressing the nerdy things that we love. So it's, did I even touch on what we were talking about?
Yeah.
I just kind of went through a whole tangent. But it's great to see people out there who are of different backgrounds also finding a similar interest in hobby. And I don't know, I love it.
Well, so I live in the middle of connecting working with the brands, agencies, or with the brands directly, and then on the other side with the content creators, and kind of living with both. When we're talking about solutions that I see from the agency perspective and the brand perspective, and I think DMA, you definitely we're talking about that right now, is in hiring the right people, but really going deep and using solutions like she was proposing. Because I've seen so many times in agencies that maybe don't have the multicultural, and you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, that don't have the multicultural team, that they hired somebody, and this is not he's not Latino enough, she's not Latino enough. It's not about that. But there are certain people that you can't just say you have one person with a Latino last name, and that person represents the Latino community in your agency, because maybe that person does not live in the Latino community environment, and doesn't really, can't bring to the table what you need. And maybe they're the ones saying yes or no to everything, and et cetera. And I can talk from the Latino perspective, not from the whole, all the diverse communities perspective. So in that sense, definitely, make sure that you find the right representation for your company when it comes to the different communities that you want to reach. And if you don't have that, if it's not a staffing, there are so many groups, like you were saying, so many affinity groups, especially within content creators, within the social media world. It is very easy to find now, a company probably like mine that will connect you with Asian American market, that will connect you with the LGBT community, that will connect you with the gay geek, with it. That it is really easy now to find those, but make sure that you're targeting those maybe smaller companies, or that will have those direct relationships, and that is more grassroots and can take you directly to that community. I definitely wanted to mention events, not only because we're producing our event now, and I'm going to show you the video, but something magical that happened with this event, that it was just last week. I'm still recovering from it, from the second one. We have 400 people, and it's Latina content creators from all over the U.S. We also have Mexico, et cetera, that started coming. And we created it always, the name of my company is Latina Bloggers Connect. So it's very specific Latinas, and why it's not because we're excluding anybody, and when we talk about segregation or integration, we're not excluding anyone. We're just creating a space where we can speak, when we can target the Latino community. It's not about excluding anybody else, because we have gotten that, those messages sometimes like, I'm not Latino, why can't I work with you? I'm like, because there's plenty other places where you can work. We are working with people that want to reach Latino audiences. We're not excluding anybody, but for the event, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have the word Latina there, so people could feel that anybody can come to the event. So it's called #WeAllGrow Summit, because the motto of the company is when one grows, we all grow as a community. So explicitly, we're saying everybody is welcome, and everybody is welcome. But when you come to the event, you know that it is who we are. From the music that you're listening to, that you probably have never heard before, because it's not your typical, it's not reggaeton, it's not like your typical Latino music, to the conversations that are being had, the women, etc. But something beautiful, and AJ, who's here, just told me, I was following, she was following along on social media. She's like, I want to come next year, right? Yeah. Because it doesn't feel like it's something that's excluded. And we got that a lot. A lot of people, non-Latinas, came this year from agencies, from bloggers, YouTubers, etc., and felt completely welcome and integrated. I want to play the video from last year really quickly. It's a minute, and oh, thanks, Chelsea. I saw that you had it set up. That's why I was like, let's play it. We'll just see how. Okay. I think it needs the sound. And it's just because I play this video when I visit agencies and when I'm talking to brands, because it really represents what the community is, and it's probably not what you would stereotypically think of a community. And when you see it, I feel that you also feel more welcomed in that sense. No? I'll send you guys a link. We'll tweet it with a hashtag. I'll tweet it with a hashtag. Yeah, no, because you kind of need to hear them.
It's the music.
And you need to hear them speaking. But anyway, yes, I'll tweet it out. But it's basically that go to events. Find those events, because like you were saying, everyone is welcome. But it's at those events where you're going to make the connections. And at the end of the day, inclusivity is about making direct connections and relationships and understanding the perspective of different people. So you need to go to those places where you're going to be able to meet the people that are going to bring you into that community and understand. Thank you. Sorry about that. That's fine.
So, content creation, what language, how do you know, what age are they, what do they like, what do they like to engage in. I say start with insights. Latinos are expected to have, or they already have 1.5 trillion purchasing power. So all of a sudden, all of the brands that I work with want that audience. And you'll start seeing that more and more these days, especially for 2016, especially with the elections. So how do we communicate with them? How do we win their hearts? And it's not as hard as you think. It's Latinos are, for the most part, very, I don't want to say simple, like in a bad way, but they love it when other cultures try to embrace their culture. So I would say start with insights, Facebook insights. Latinos are mostly on Facebook. Although they are mostly on Facebook, they're more engaged on Instagram. And what's so great about those two platforms is that you can target. And so that's where Facebook ads come in place. Facebook has made it very easy for advertisers to target whatever audience you want to reach. So that's the easy part. The hard part is the content, right? So how do I create that content? Working with bloggers is a perfect way. They already love sharing their voice, their culture. They love just sharing, period. And if you reach out to them, they are more than welcome to work. They love working with brands. They love sharing what they are passionate about. But it has to be in their voice. So you can't reach out to a blogger or an influencer and say, okay, I want you to share this about my brand, but can you say this and can you say that? It doesn't work that way. They are definitely, it's not that they're going rogue or anything, but that's you have asked them to share their voice and to reach their audience. And they know their audience better than anybody else. And so you kind of have to go with it, and you have to trust them. And when you end up, before you hire them, just like Anna was saying, is you have to analyze their blog, analyze their voice, and see if it's the perfect brand for you, and the perfect partnership for your brand. Content, user-generated content does really well. Following hashtags, conversations. Get yourself familiar with the culture. Just get yourself familiar with the language. We all speak Spanish, but it's not always the same. So, perfect, case study that I have is I work with U.S. Hispanics, but I also work with Latin America. And we started working with Mexico, Peru, Colombia, and so forth. And they wanted to share one campaign that was created by U.S., and they wanted us to translate it, same messaging, all across Latin America. And I told them, hey, it doesn't work that way, and it was something about mustaches. And I'm like, all Latinos have mustaches. They don't think anything's weird about it, like it's not going to work, And so they said, no, just go with it. We don't have budget, just go with it. So we did, and it was a total fail. People were just like, what is this? What is this supposed to mean? They're laughing. They're like total negative feedback across all social platforms. So they said, okay, next campaign, we learned from it. And they said, well, let's, Spanish all across the board. Doesn't work that way either. You have people from Chile, you have people from Argentina, you have people from Colombia, Mexico, they have certain words that sometimes don't always mean the same thing.
We had in Puerto Rico and a general part in Argentina.
Yes. So. And I learned that because I was at Starbucks and I screamed, oh my God, look, cajeta. Well, it turns out cajeta means something else in Peru. So, it wasn't a good thing. But, so even within Spanish, you still have to be very careful with the words that you choose and the campaigns that you go with. And that comes down to working with the people that know the culture and the language very well. It just works better for you, better for the brand, and it's less work. You don't have to keep going back for edits, and and it just works better that way. As far as I wrote something else. I don't want to miss any of the tips for you guys. Okay. So talk about insights. Community management. That's my favorite. So, at what point do you need to hire a bilingual community manager? We were working with a protein bar, and it turns out that their product was very popular in Belize, and it was also very popular in Brazil. I don't speak Portuguese, and I speak Spanish, but even my Spanish, when I write it, it's not that great. So we do have a content creator that writes in Spanish, but then we also now had to hire a Portuguese person. And
Brazilian Portuguese.
sorry?
Brazilian Portuguese.
Brazilian Portuguese, yes, Brazilian Portuguese person. And so we do have to spend that extra money to make sure that questions are being answered properly. And when somebody is asking you something, a question in their language, it's very polite to answer them back in that same language. Does it mean that you need to create 2 different languages, or do you need to create different Facebook pages? No, because Facebook has made it so easy for you to start, for you to target. So within Latin America, we were able to speak multiple Spanish languages, and we were also able to advertise in English. So definitely don't go cheap on the, don't hire interns, please. Don't hire interns. I think that you guys have all heard about it, but it applies also for Hispanic markets.
Can I add one thing too? I want to talk about the hashtag / expression, who was in the room. You will often see when some absolutely unbelievable moment happens in entertainment that people will hit Twitter saying who was in the room, and don't be on the other side of that question. This is where your network will come in hand. Don't be shy from having had all of those teas and all of those Friday meetings, but you have to make some content decisions for which you were not necessarily the best prepared to pick up the phone. Don't just call that one dude that works at her company that had the right last name, but maybe doesn't know everything you need to know. Like, you have to have a very diverse group of people that you can reach out and run things past. If it's just you in social media, and if not, if you're at a company, you do have to go say, let's find someone professional who can represent this. And on the other side, for those of you who might be working in a not diverse experience, whatever that might look like, certainly when I was in television, I was often the only chip in the cookie, as the expression goes. It's very difficult to be the only chip in the cookie because you become the official ambassador for things, but you also have absolutely no voice supporting you when crazy, crazy things happen. Like when your head writer pitches that the black male lead's brother visit them in Africa, and it turns out to be a gorilla, it would not be funny. And so when those things happen to you, you have to have friends in not high but important places. If you're still working inside of a non-diverse experience, then the people you want to befriend are the people in standards and practices. And by befriend, I mean take to lunch, show up randomly at their office, and otherwise become a trustworthy soul. Because sometimes you don't want to be the person that's in the room fighting and fighting and fighting. Sometimes you can just kind of, okay, I really don't agree with that, blah, 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 and then you get on the phone, you call standards and practices, and you work around that. Or you just do Effie Brown, and you're like, wow, okay. Everyone saw that epic moment with Matt Damon. So there's always a workaround. You don't have to swallow your pride and hope that you can get through it, no matter what that is.
I just remembered one quick example. When, I don't know if y'all remember, it was, last year was 2014, when Disney tried to copyright Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah. How about that?
Any Mexican, with, second, third generation or something, would have been able to tell them. Anybody in that room, anybody from the legal team, anybody from the production team in Pixar, somebody would have been able to say, that's copywriting Halloween.
Right.
So, I mean, it's really, so, right, that's how important and how big and how much it can explode in your face, because it was all, these huge Latino groups and advocacy groups and everybody just coming out strong in force, enraged. I don't think they understood how deep that could come.
Latino, if they can get crazy.
And there's certain things that are like, more sensitive points than others. So that one, exploded in Mexico. It just started exploding everywhere. So, that's how important it is to have the right people in the team, that gets it, that you can call, that you can pick up, that you can have in the room when you're making these type of decisions.
So I wanted to open it up to audience Q&A. We have one mic. And I want to encourage the panelists, as you take questions and provide answers, to say something about how you measure success. What does success look like? Does it mean more voices in the space, or does it mean people talking across the more segregated lines that we generally see? And we've heard a little bit about that in glimpses in the presentations that you've given, but I'm hoping that will come out more in the Q&A. So,
What are some of the segregated lines you're seeing? I don't think I see them, but that's
I think a lot of it is generational. Listening to you, the notion of inclusion is very much a part of the spaces that people between the ages of, I won't make any assumptions, but let's say 18 and 35 occupy. My generation, the social media spaces are very segregated, as are most social networks. And to the extent that people in positions of power and responsibility tend to, not always, occupy the older generations tend to dominate in some industries and some organizations, then people are in a bubble and they're only seeing the channels and networks that they've already pre-screened to look like them. So the notion that they would ever see any Latino space at all is an explanation for why when someone says, we need to diversify, they say, well, we don't know anyone, because they're not crossing those lines. But my guess is that that's partly a generational problem, and Eric and I have talked a lot about the problem of translating up generations. But success will vary from both generation to generation and also from panelist to panelist. But let's open the conversation a lot more broadly to take questions from you all. And I'm going to play Phil Donahue and walk around with a mic.
That's a generational
Let's
reference. Is that the guy that Oprah stole everything from?
Exactly.
It is.
I was actually saying that I got that. I think that it's great having you here as a panel. I think it's, I just recently joined a company that has to make some further steps into this kind of realm. I think internally, it's a positive story, and I've seen some definitely great examples. I think in the promotions, they're really flat-footed. So I think a lot of the tips you have tonight have been helpful. What do you think are some of the, and I'm borrowing from a Twitter post that someone just sent to me, but I'm about to answer it, but what are some of the most effective campaigns that you've seen out there where a company really has gotten it and really done something effective?
There's a few.
Takers?
Yeah, there's a few.
Success stories.
There's actually a few, and a few of my favorites too, because I like to get inspired with my content as well, and certain campaigns. We don't do TV advertisement, but commercials have come a long way, especially Super Bowl commercials, right? So I think that McDonald's has really adapted Latinos really well. I'm not a McDonald's person by any means, but they've really done a great job with their social as far as using some of the slang words or capturing family, capturing music. Latinos, if you put music, food, and family all together, you are already in.
Soccer.
Yeah, soccer. Yeah, exactly. And Anna just said Target. Target's done a really great job also reaching out to Latinos. Nissan has made really great commercials and reaching out to the Hispanic market. And there's consistency there. If you take a look at their advertisement or even some of their content creation, food, music, and family, that's definitely a way to win into their hearts, capture their hearts.
About let me say at least why I love the Target commercials. It's because they're trying to reach the bicultural audience, and they did it in a really effective way and cost-effective way. Instead of having to create one spot for Univision, Telemundo, etc., and another spot for the general market, it's now total market. So they created these spots where there's songs playing in the background in Spanish, or all of a sudden a Spanish word here and there. You might not even get it that it happened, right? But we get it, and we're instantly attracted to it, and we know that we're being included as well, without it having to be in anybody's face in that way.
One campaign that I saw last summer during Pride Month was YouTube did a whole Proud to Be campaign, which is where they encouraged everyone on the network, everyone on YouTube to post a video about what they were proud to be. And it wasn't specifically LGBT oriented, but they had a lot of their top tier LGBT creators making videos about how they were proud to be who they were, how they got to where they are in their lives, and kind of just expressing more visibility to that extent and allowing their casual viewers who don't necessarily make YouTube content to see that there are other people out there who are not only making content like this, but also inspiring other people to create content. So it was more of a trickle-down effect, where they got maybe 7 or 8 of the main creators to make these videos, and then from there it just kind of went downwards to even the smallest subscriber base of 10 to 15 subscribers. People were making videos about who they were proud to be, and recently Instagram has a whole campaign called Visible Me, where they're encouraging young LGBT users of the website to post videos about just themselves, even selfies of themselves, saying that this is who I am, this is me being visible, so other people of that sort of background can see that there are other people out there much like themselves.
Yeah, I would really go back to all of the BuzzFeed race and social justice videos, because they are really beautiful sensibility, very funny, and they're done across ethnic communities. I would certainly say shows like Modern Family and Blackish, where you get to see people having very normal conversations about everything, about race, sexuality, gender, and relationships, and not in the kind of heated, sermon-y way that when you are the only chip in the cookie on a show, that's what you're allocated, just to bring the point up and make people feel comfortable around it. So seeing how naturally that people often are just engaging as part of their lives around those topics, I think those shows do great. In terms of commercials, as a feminist who's probably a little older than you are, so thanks for that compliment. It doesn't crack. It doesn't crack. Age don't age. I see how young your set is. Which is a really big surprise. As a feminist, Flo's progressive commercial about the 1950s housewife is one of the finest things I've ever seen. I mean, I didn't know when I first watched it whether to laugh or cry, because I simply could not believe that someone came up with that ad. And I did ask in a good way who was in the room. And then finally, number 1, the Cheerios commercial. The Cheerios commercial with the black father, the white mother, and the little girl who says it to her mom, will Cheerios help his heart? And then she pours the Cheerio box on the heart. And it was done in a very just normalized, completely, not calling to attention way. And most important, people protested it. And people protested it because they're still getting used to that. But the protest was completely drowned out because social media allows all of that nonsense to be bypassed, and it no longer dominates the conversation. So it was protested, that was ignored, it was celebrated in social media.
I'm not sure if I really have a question, but the thing is, I know a lot of multicultural marketing and diversity issues, and the stories that you guys are sharing is great. But the reality is, there's another reality. And so I know that one of the agencies here in Los Angeles is working on a project, and I was talking to them, and I, based on everything that they were doing, I said, well, did you guys get an African American director to do the spot? It's like, well, we couldn't find anybody. It's like, you can find a music director in Los Angeles to do this? In Los Angeles? They said, well, we were talking to somebody in England. So you're talking to some black guy in England who's not even African American to do the spot, because you can't find anybody in the U.S. and Los Angeles. So that's one example. Even at my office, we were working on it, and we were trying to find somebody with some Hispanic background in marketing, and I was told, well, we can't find anybody. Actually, in Los Angeles, you can't find anybody. So this is the reality.
Who are they talking to?
This is the reality.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the reality that we're dealing with. So years ago, I was working on a car account, and the budget to produce a car commercial was $200,000 less for the African American budget than was for the general market budget. Yet we're still working with the same type of unions, directors, equipment. So how do you justify that? So if I have a question, it's like, how do we institute change with these bigger agencies, with these bigger corporations? Because that's really where the problems lie.
Are we talking about, you mean for social media or for commercials?
It goes to entertainment, it goes to social media,
No, I know, but
it goes to marketing.
because we're here talking about social media, where some of those issues have been erased. I mean, I've worked in television, and yeah, it's a big problem in television, but I'm killing it in social media. Here's the thing. The reason I created the Hollywood Diversity Directory was exactly that. Because anyone who says they can't find people, I believe it. Until I show them the directory, and here they are, and they still don't take the meeting. If that's the case, then you're just the Appalachian voters in 2008 that Obama had to work around. And Trump supporters now. There are people whose minds were not going to change. And I don't have the energy to change people's minds. I am much more interested in connecting the people whose minds are already made up towards diversity to opportunity and each other. So yes, the problem still exists. I don't know that in social media because I'm not dealing commercially in social media. But the idea is, if that's the answer, then you go and create Hollywood Diversity Directory and you say, here's 14 commercial directors that live in Los Angeles. 2 of them have, Chloe's, and they're all African American. And then see if they will take the meeting. If not, you just have to shake your head and say this is not going to be fixable with that person.
I'm really optimistic. I think the magical year 2035, even if people are short-term thinkers, when we're a majority-minority country, markets and labor force, you don't have a choice at some point but to expand your networks.
Oh, that's in South Africa.
But it's happened in South Africa. Yes, believe me, and we can talk about it.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time working there.
Me too. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm going to try to, everyone's about to gap. I'm going to try to ask this in the
This will be the last
least
question.
offensive way possible. All right, so I'm a single white, running social media, single white lady running social media for a myriad of clients, right? And what would you, how do I phrase this? I want to engage my clients into like the Black Lives Matter conversation, something like that, or something Latina focused, or LGBT or whatever. What advice would you give to someone like me who doesn't want to look like they're just trying to, like who genuinely has something to say, but because I'm a white person, I'm, not allowed to, or, because people on Twitter hate on me for that, whatever, but what advice would you give to engage in those kinds of conversations without looking pandrous?
I think that
There's a term called hispandering. I don't know.
I think the most important thing you can do is go into those conversations authentically. What people sometimes take offense to is your decision that as a person of color, or I think, if you're a man, your decision that a woman can't have a rational conversation around their race or their gender because they're so sensitive. We're extremely good at it. We've been doing it since we were 3 years old. Think about how many times you've had to talk a man off of the wall around women's issues.
Sure.
All right, it's exactly the same. You can find 100% empathy and alignment as a woman, that when you're approaching communities with authentic curiosity and say, hey, I really want to partner up with the Black Lives Matter movement, can you connect me to someone? You'll get 100,000 emails. If you say, hey, I'm not a racist, but you've lost everyone after that one. After that, but you know what I mean? Like, just comment it in an authentic way, and people will, I want you to look with a much more critical eye at what puts Black Twitter into an uproar. And it's never an honest question about their opinion. It is usually an appropriation of their culture, or a judgment, or a decision that what they're saying matters doesn't. That's when Black Twitter will go crazy. But if you're just saying, hey, I love that you guys are here, I have some questions to ask you, you will not be able to clear your inbox fast enough.
And going off that, I recently saw a webcomic that was catered towards the trans community. It was what you're asking versus what we hear. And it was really great, and I can't remember any specific examples, but it was a way to show that the questions that you ask, as long as they're coming from a very authentic, like you said, place, they will be perceived in a positive light. If you're going about it in more of a curious manner, and if you're uneducated and you don't really know how to tackle the topic head on, just go to them in a very open and honest way and say, hey, I don't know much about this, can you help me understand it better, as opposed to asking a question that might be potentially wildly offensive and you just lose a friend in the process.
What they said, yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
I would have to add to that, as someone who works a lot in different communities of color, and if you engage in a legitimate matter, exactly as you said, as an individual, I think that the level of engagement really varies on the intensity and the authority in which you want to lead that debate. And I feel like the communities of color that I work with may have respected my opinion in regarding the immigration debate. I work a lot on immigration, work some on immigration. And what I found was if you want to be effective, if you want to insert yourself, it depends on that level of insertion, and you need to be able to have an expert in that community represent, or else it's nice that you want to be involved in your big emails, but that's only, what did you say, like take it to the next level? Like on that level, yeah. But on the other level, if you're going to start speaking for a large group of people, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what he's saying, being an avid part of Black Twitter, I guess. But I think that it would be good for her to insulate herself with people who are already associated with like Black Lives Matter outside of social media prior to taking those initial steps of getting involved, because it does make you seem like a more credible source. And you probably will get backlash because of your skin color anyway, but they'll be able to help you out a little bit more.
In many ways, it's like breaking into any other new field. I mean, we would never think of going into a new field without doing our homework and finding a Sherpa to guide us. But in some instances, some people feel more comfortable barging in without having done that homework and without finding people to insulate you and to figure things out. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Please join me in thanking our amazing panelists for their amazing and some announcements before we go.
Yeah. So by the way, hi, I'm AJ. I'm the president of Social Media Club LA. But just so you don't wonder why I was just like standing there in the back of the room. Thank you all so much. This was so compelling, and I wish we had more time. I love that we just started passing the mic around. That was great. So I just want to make a couple quick announcements. Again, if you want to talk about membership to Social Media Club, board members, raise your hands. I always make them do this. Those are the people to talk to. They've got green dots on their name tags to help you out. One other thing, our next event will be probably April 26th. It'll be about the death of blogging. We're going to have a funeral for bloggers, guys. And not even joking. Bloggers Lives Matter. I'm sorry. And then one more thing I want to. What?
Oh, I'm just checking.
Yeah. Don't do that. Terrible joke. I'm going to get fired from my job tomorrow. Okay, so Digital Summit Los Angeles, we are a media partner with this group. I don't know if you've seen it in the Social Media Club Facebook group, which you should all be a member of. An amazing conversation happens in that group. But Digital Summit LA is coming April 5th and 6th to the Skirball Cultural Center. There's postcards on the table out front, speakers from Coca-Cola, Porter Novelli, Uber, Facebook, BuzzFeed, Salesforce, Microsoft, Visa, just like amazing panelists, amazing companies, amazing speakers. It'll be April 5th and 6th, and because you're affiliated with Social Media Club, you can get $50 off your registration if you use the code SMCLA50. It's in the Facebook group if you need to look for it later, or you can grab one of these postcards on the way out. I really recommend it. I've been working with these guys. It's fantastic. Social Media Club has enjoyed the relationship with them. And the only other thing I would ask is when you're tweeting, Facebooking, Instagramming, Pinteresting, Snapchatting, whatevering about this event, our hashtag is SMCLA. You've hopefully been paying attention to the panelists' handles up there on the monitor. Please thank them. Please thank Porter Novelli for having us. We really appreciate it. We can't keep doing this without you guys coming and sponsors helping us out. So thank you.
It was interesting. It was interesting meeting.